Alice, can you tell us a bit about Back-to-Back Theatre?
So, Back-to-Back Theatre is a relatively small theatre company based in the regional centre of Geelong, about an hour from Melbourne. And it is almost 25 years old, and it has at its core 6 actors who are perceived to have intellectual disabilities. And together with our artistic director and guest artists, they improvise and write and make shows over a very long period of time. Make one major new work about every 3 years. And the focus is on contemporary art.
Okay. So, in the past, how many plays have you staged?
Oh, I think almost about 50 in the company's almost 25-year-old history. The current artistic director, Bruce Gladwin, this is his 12th year. He's made 6 works, major works in that time.
Can you tell us a bit about this particular Back-to-Back Theatre's association of doing plays with intellectually disabled or challenged people and promoting them?
Back-to-Back Theatre came about during a time in Australian history when people with disabilities were being moved from institutional context to living and being more integrated into society, into the community. And a group of artists in Geelong, young artists, decided to make a theatre company working with some other community members with disabilities. And they made a show, and immediately it was successful, and thus was born Back-to-Back Theatre. In terms of the focus of the company's unusual because it has artists with disabilities. But actually, the focus of the company is not disability. The focus of the company is artistic, ruthless artistic, creative investigation. And the work is interesting because the perspective of the artists is idiosyncratic.
With relation to this particular play, Ganesha versus the Third Reich, how did you decide about staging this particular play? How did the whole thing was planned? Was it a script-based play, or it was just a kind of an improvised?
So Back-to-Back Theatre makes works over extended time frames. So typically a work may be in development for 2 to 3 years before it even enters into a production phase. And many years ago we did a creative development, and it actually began with us looking at a series of images that had been drawn by a long-standing member of the company, Rita Halleberg, who's actually subsequently left the company. And she was obsessed with Ganesh, and she would just every day just draw hundreds of images of Ganesh. And we began a creative development actually just looking at these images and getting them to describe them to us. And then at the same time we did an investigation of pitching the actors' voices, so taking their voices and making them much higher or much lower, and seeing how that affected their manner, physicalization, characterization. And another actor, Sonia Tubin, created this. She arrived one day wearing this bomber jacket and really closely cropped hair, and she created this kind of neo-Nazi character. And at some point we put the two together and birthed this seemingly ridiculous idea that Ganesh should travel to Nazi Germany to retrieve the swastika. So that's how it came about. And then the artistic team sat on that idea for a good deal of time, thinking that's completely difficult territory, and we should really not be looking at it. And then over time, I guess that became the rationale for presenting the work, that actually it was incredibly difficult territory that would unearth something of real interest. Yeah.
Okay. So, since the play has been, the announcement of this play has been made, there has been lots of controversy which seems to surround the play, especially with regards to the representation of Ganesha. So, what have been the main issues which has been raised and which the company has tried to address?
So the main issues have been the perception in certain segments of the community that Back-to-Back Theatre was presenting a comedy in which Ganesh was ridiculed or not fully honoured. And that the misperception arose over certain things we said about the play in public context several years ago, as well as some imagery that was produced for the play, which somehow augmented the idea that the work was a comedy. And so that was the kind of broad concern about it. And initially, we just simply said the work isn't a comedy. And paradoxically, as well, the work is actually an investigation of the kinds of issues that people were concerned about, which was about cultural appropriation. And that was the topic of the work. And therefore, we didn't understand, we were surprised, or we just kind of thought, oh my goodness, we're actually stepping on the toes of this issue in our representation. So I think that, we understand now that we made some errors in some of the earlier descriptions, but I can say wholeheartedly that, in terms of our representation in the Ganesh, in the production itself, we were very, very careful about the representation of Ganesh and undertook a lot of research and communicated with people in Australia and India about what was permissible, what wasn't, what was important to honour. And so we thought we'd actually done a really fine job of that. And I guess the main thing is also that Ganesh is the hero of our story, and he is goodness and greatness in the story, and Hitler's Nazis are the reverse. So in terms of what we've had to address, I guess we had a really interesting, constructive meeting with members of the Hindu community and other members of the community from other faiths. And I guess we just had to acknowledge that we'd inadvertently offended some community members, particularly because of their perception of what the play was going to be about, not necessarily what it was going to be about. And so some days ago we just issued a statement together with those representatives from the religious communities about, that we regretted that. And we've removed some of the earlier images where possible. Some of them are in print, it's difficult to remove them, but from the public domain. And we've put a warning on the show, which we had a warning on the show which was already about some of the adult themes, and there's coarse language in the play, but we've added to that a kind of discussion about that the play contains representations of Lord Ganesh, which some may find troublesome. And furthermore, that the play touches on some historic, moments, particularly the Holocaust, which are difficult moments, and to be aware of that when you come into the theatre.
What has been the response of the audience after the play?
Look, we've had 2 shows, and look, my sense is that the work has had a really solid and a really wholesome welcome. So people on the whole liked it, but also that it's a work that raises more questions than it answers. And so actually for audiences talking about it, they're kind of like, oh, it did challenge me. It challenged me about my own misconceptions. It challenged me about questions of who has voice and who has power and who can speak for whom. But also it was kind of, there's discussions about its form. Its form is fairly unusual. It feels quite unraveled as a form, and it lays itself bare deliberately, and kind of, someone described it to me the other day as a double helix. It kind of rolls in on itself again and again and again. And I guess there's one unifying thing that I've felt helpful in describing the company's work in general, which is that the work always invites multiple interpretations. It doesn't say, this is our message. Or someone said to me the other day, theatre is not a sermon and theatre is not a lesson. You know, the work invites you to react to it in whatever way you do, based on who you are, but also to challenge who you are.
Okay. And do you plan to have more shows of this play and travel with this play nationally and internationally?
I guess, you know, back-to-back theatre is a work that has in the last 5 or so years toured. And I guess we would hope that this work will enter into our repertoire. But of course, we can't predict whether it will or not. And, you know, we're at the mercy of the audiences as to what their assessment of the work is. And, I think this work will be, we've now understood that it comes with a set of parameters around it that are beyond the bounds of theatre and into another domain, a broader domain, which theatre should, of course, but it's quite explicit in this case. And I think it will be a really interesting work if we're able to bring it to other communities.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.